Likes, subscribe and share my channel at Sunrise for All in One.
Counting your breath. With this method, you're just going to focus on your breath and nothing else. By doing this, you achieve a tremendous amount of relaxation. If you practice this long enough, you can achieve a very deep and abiding sense of inner peace. It's fairly straightforward. There are really no moving parts. It's not complicated at all. Preparations. First, you need to find the right spot. Generally speaking, you should do this in an area where you're not going to be disturbed. There should be no distractions in terms of what you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. It should be a place that will only be available to you for around 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't really take all that long, but you have to be in the right spot for a long enough period of time for this meditative technique to benefit you. Second, you're going to close your eyes. This is a technique that you cannot do with your eyes open. Remember, we're basically going to avoid any kind of distractions. These distractions can be seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched. No distractions. So you close your eyes and you just focus on one thing and one thing alone. Third, focus only on your breath. How are you going to focus on your breath? Well, you're not going to focus on it by feeling it or hearing it. Instead, you're going to watch it. In other words, you turn your mental camera to your breath. You imagine yourself seeing yourself breathe in and breathe out. The key here is to feel it with your body and see it in your mind's eye. Eventually, these two sensations will line up. So it diverts your attention from the stuff going through your mind as well as the stimuli that your body is picking up. Instead, everything is focused on your breath. Your conscious attention is focused solely on your breath. You breathe in slowly and you breathe out slowly. Everything is focused on the area of your body where the breath is coming in and going out. The key here is to not control your breath. The key is to not be self-conscious. Instead, you're just paying attention to this natural flow. When you feel that there's a strain in your lungs, you're doing it wrong. It means you're being self-conscious. It means that you're trying to force things. This should not be forced. It is actually effortless. You're just basically turning that mental camera that you have from obsessing about all these stresses or drama happening in your life to just focusing on your breath. That's all it will be focused on. And if you keep this up long enough, you will become very, very relaxed. It leads to a tremendous amount of inner peace. However, let me tell you, in the beginning, it's going to be quite difficult. You might even feel bored. You might even feel like you're wasting your time. It's because this is something new. Your mind is not used to thinking this way. After all, your mind has grown accustomed to thinking about 1,000 different things at once. It's used to using up a tremendous amount of energy. Now, you're using very little energy and you're focusing on only one thing. As you can imagine, that takes some getting used to. The good news is it's worth doing because the calm and relaxation that you get will be priceless. Present sense mindfulness. With this technique, you focus on what you see in front of you. In other words, you're going to be meditating or practicing mindfulness with eyes wide open. You're just working with your awareness. You're training your awareness on one thing and one thing alone. Steps to present sense mindfulness. The first step is to practice the breathing patterns that you learned in video 6. Focus on your breathing until you achieve a sense of relaxation. You do this with your eyes wide open. You can do this in a room with no other people, but there are objects in the room. You do this with your eyes open. Ideally, you shouldn't do this in any place where there are loud noises or music. Next, you're going to focus on an object in front of you. It can be a tree, a park bench. It can be a house. It doesn't really matter. What's important is that you put all your focus on that one item alone. The key is to look at that item. You're not out to enjoy it. You're not out to judge it. You're definitely not out to analyze it. Instead, you're just looking at it. The key here is to see clearly. You're going to basically be looking at all the details. It's not like you're searching for something. Instead, your job is just to take it all in. It is kind of like taking a very thorough, high-resolution snapshot of that item that you've chosen to look at. Next, once you have determined that you have seen all there is to see about the object, the next step is to pay attention to what that object would smell like, taste like, feel like in terms of texture, and what it would sound like. In other words, you sense it in 3 dimensions. You take it in with all your senses. This enables you to lose your focus on everything else. When you do this, your mind is being filled with the stimuli of that object and that object alone. You have no space left for stuff you have to worry about at the office. You have no mental resources left for that time when your best friend stabbed you in the back or did something that made you hold a grudge for a long time. All that stuff gets pushed out. Instead, You're just cramming all the sensory data that you are willfully taking in based on that object that you have chosen in front of you. This enables you to lose focus on everything else and focus on that thing in front of you. This enables you to reset how you normally focus on things in your life. The reason why you're so stressed out is because you're hanging on for dear life onto so many different things, and they layer on top of each other. And at the end of the day, all this willpower and this mental energy is just basically wasted because you're hanging on to so much stuff. When you practice this meditative technique, you push a reboot button for your mind and let go of all that stuff that you're clinging to. And instead, you just fill it with the stuff that you take in and that you flush out. Eventually, this leads to mental hygiene because you will develop the mental discipline to zero in on an issue or a set of data for however long it takes to produce. Let's say at work or in an argument or even dealing with a relationship, and then let go. Watch your emotions like clouds. Once you have done the previous meditative practices, the next step is to meditate in such a way that you let go of emotional attachments. Let's get one thing clear. Part of the reason why we're all so stressed out and anxious is because our memories are not emotionally neutral. When we perceive certain things, we tend to react a certain way because we have been trained by past experiences to respond that way. What if I told you that in many cases, we respond in a very unproductive and downright negative way? We could be responding in more neutral or more positive ways, and our lives could be more productive. Instead of wasting a tremendous amount of emotional and mental resources feeling negative, angry, frustrated, guilty, upset, you name it, we can focus more on feeling appreciated as well as content. It's all a choice. But unfortunately, if we hang on to these past memories and we judge them in a predictably negative way, we lose sight of the fact that we can always choose our judgments. We feel that our negative analysis is just who we are. It's part of our identity. It's part of our personality. Well, it isn't. It's always a choice. With this technique, you gain some freedom from the emotional roller coaster ride that you feel just takes you to negative territory like clockwork. Here's how it works. Step number 1, count your breath. Go back to the earlier video where I taught you how to count your breath. Watch your breath. Count it. Focus on your breath. At a certain point, you will relax. You can use the SEAL method, or you can use the more intensive breath counting and watching method I discussed earlier. Whatever the case may be, keep doing it until you sense relaxation. Step number 2, close your eyes. Once you feel that you have reached a certain level of relaxation, close your eyes. Everything should go black. Allow yourself to relax even deeper. Allow yourself to slow your thoughts down. Just focus on the calmness of the darkness. There's nothing to prove here. You don't have to be somebody that you're not. You have nobody to impress. This is just you and your thoughts. It's just calm, pure darkness. No light, no color, nothing to get worked up about. Step number 3, focus on your thoughts. Once you have relaxed, pretend that you are in some sort of movie theater and you're sitting back and you're seeing scenes. These are your thoughts. When you assume that perspective, you would realize that you're thinking a lot. If you're a normal person, a lot of mental images flash through your mind. In fact, we go through so many mental images, oftentimes we're not aware of them all. So sit back and just see your thoughts play out. Step number 4, make sure not to judge or analyze your thoughts. Here's the thing that you will be doing differently. Most people have no problem seeing mental images flash through their mind. But the problem is, once that happens, they get all emotionally caught up. For example, you had an ex who cheated on you, stole from you, or otherwise did bad things to you. How do you think you would feel when you see something that reminds you of him or her? You probably don't feel all that good. Now with this technique, when the mental image or the picture or the likeness of your ex comes to your mind, your rule is that you let the image flash, but you will hold judgment. You're not going to analyze it. You're just going to acknowledge that this is the image of my ex, this is the image of my boss, this is a scene from my childhood, this is a scene where I was let go at work, this is a scene at jail. Whatever the case may be, you're seeing all these mental images, but you're not judging. You are acknowledging. It's very important that you know the distinction. You're not engaged in pretending to not see something. For example, if there was a fire in your childhood, you're not going to say, well, this was a happy moment in my childhood. No, this was a fire in my childhood. But this is going to be different from this is a very traumatizing childhood memory that basically destroyed my life because I lost both parents. Do you see the difference? There's no judgment here. You just say, this is a fire that happened when I was a child. It's stripped out of all emotional baggage. It's stripped out of all emotional trauma. Acknowledge and describe in a very objective, flat, and neutral way. This is not going to happen overnight. If you are carrying around a very heavy weight, maybe child sexual abuse, maybe you were unjustly punished. Whatever the case may be, you just need to focus on what you see. Do not judge. Do not analyze. Just acknowledge it and then move on to the next step. Step number 5. Let your thoughts pass like clouds. One of my fondest childhood memories involves me and my cousins just going up to this little hill, and for what seemed like hours, we would just lay back on the grass and watch the clouds pass by. My cousin would say, "That's a bicycle." I would say, "No, that looks more like a dog." There was, of course, no right or wrong answer. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Every person's guess was as good as all others. It was a lot of fun because we were exercising our imaginations. We were, after all, just watching clouds pass by. There were countless clouds before them, and there will be countless clouds after them. They are here one moment and gone the next. I want you to do the same with your thoughts, but let them pass like clouds. Just like clouds, your thoughts just pass through. Let them pass. Don't deny them. Don't pretend they are something else. Don't argue with them. Don't bargain with yourself. Just observe the thought clouds honestly. In other words, when the mental image flashes, acknowledge it. For example, this is a fire that happened when I was 3 years old. This is an image of my parents about to leave for the United States when I was 3 years old. Whatever image you have from the past, strip it of all emotional judgment or analysis. Make sure you empty the mental image of any emotional content that might trip you up or set you off into an emotional analysis. Compare this. This is the fire that happened when I was 3 years old. 2. This is that devastating fire that made my family homeless for 3 years. My father was very angry during that fire, and he has not stopped being angry since. We lost it all. I was only 3 years old. See the difference? The first case involved just describing the facts, nothing more, nothing less. The other case includes a lot of analysis and commentary. These lead to you getting thrown off track. Learn to spot the difference. Recognize the point when you stopped objectively describing and started emotionally reacting. It doesn't make it any less real, mind you, but you're just acknowledging it because we're not engaged in self-delusion here. We're not trying to trick ourselves or hypnotize ourselves into thinking that these events, which ultimately are very traumatic and hurtful, did not happen. Instead, you're just acknowledging. And then the next step is what makes it really powerful. When you acknowledge, you then let it pass like a cloud. Just like a cloud, it's going to zoom over your head. It's going to linger slowly, depending on how strong the wind is. But you just let it pass. Eventually, it will pass. Step number 6, enjoy the emotional distance. When you repeat this over several weeks, you start noticing emotional distance. Mental images, memories, or what have you, that used to throw you off track no longer do. Maybe there was a memory that used to make you cry like you were on autopilot. Now you don't do that. You just say, "Well, that happened to me when I was 4 years old and my housekeeper was in that memory." Then you let it pass. "Well, that happened to me and my boss said something and I was let go and I found another job." You let it pass. "Well, that was my best friend and my ex-girlfriend." You let the memory pass. You do this over and over again, and the more successful you become at it, the greater the emotional distance. Eventually, all that stuff that used to drag you down and hold you back is left in the past. Congratulations. Meditation best practices. Meditation is like working out. When you work out, you put a lot of stress on your muscles. That's how they get bigger. That's how they get leaner. That's how they get stronger. The same applies to your mental muscles, because that's what meditation is. It's a mental workout. Physical muscles get soft if you don't challenge them or you don't put pressure on them. With meditation, you're going to challenge and put pressure on your mental muscles. Believe me, it is quite a workout to let a mental image just pass over your head like a cloud without judging it. For example, there was an episode of your childhood that used to burn you through your core because it was really humiliating. It was disgusting. Whatever it was, it takes effort to do that. But that's how you challenge your mental muscles. And the more pressure you put on it, the stronger it gets. Practice daily. The good news here is that you don't have to spend all day meditating. In fact, if you're doing that, you're overdoing it. That's probably going to do more harm than good. Instead, focus on spending no more than 15 minutes a day. With meditation, a little bit of consistency goes a long way. So focus on your meditative practice for no more than 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes is plenty. Associate your meditative state with certain stimuli. This is for advanced students. Usually, by this point, it will probably take months, if not years. But most people, if they're consistent, will reach this point. When you perceive any new stimuli, allow yourself to focus on your meditative state. You're basically linking the meditative state of peace, calm, inner serenity, and harmony with stimuli that normally upsets you. For example, if you work with an ex, it can be quite uncomfortable, awkward, and frustrating. This person broke your heart, this person cheated on you, or you're embarrassed because it didn't work out. Whatever the case may be, it's going to be very hard to handle that stimuli. After you've meditated and you've gained some emotional distance, allow yourself to look for that stimuli and link it with a meditative state. In other words, you are replacing the stress, discomfort, and embarrassment that you normally feel when you perceive that stimuli. Maybe it involves seeing the face of your ex or hearing his or her voice, whatever the case may be. Now, you're replacing it with a meditative state. The meditative state, of course, involves a sense of calm, being in control, clarity, peace, healing, restoration. So instead of that person's voice or image just stressing you out, upsetting you, now it calms you down. You say to yourself, I'm okay. There's nothing to get hung up about. I can deal with this situation, this person, these memories at a certain level, and I'll be okay. Sure, in the beginning this is going to be difficult because of your mental habits. When you were just starting out, the urge to go back to your old reactive patterns with its rush of negative emotions seems to be all but irresistible. This is the hardest part, but you can overcome. Choose to override this natural tendency, and it will get easier and easier to respond to life stimuli based on your highest values instead of your feelings or whatever is convenient or easy. The more opportunities you seek to practice your newfound power over your emotions, the stronger your mind becomes. It also makes the link between certain positive stimuli and positive emotions or positive mental states. Of course, none of this happens all at once. It takes time. Still, every time you successfully choose to focus on being calm and successfully recall the mental calmness of your meditative state, the easier it gets. The secret is practice. Interestingly enough, to get the practice you need, you actually have to seek out situations or stimuli that normally stress you out. That's the only way you can test out your ability to recall a calm inner peace. Usually, people do not need help recalling stressful, embarrassing, traumatic, or painful memories. Start there. Since these are thoughts, you have a lot more control over the thought and the outcome. Compare the above to testing out your meditative recall skills on actual people. People can be quite random. You might have a very sticky situation on your hands, and unlike memories, there's no rewind button if you end up saying or doing something that harms your relationship or takes it to a much lower level. Regardless of how you do it, give yourself the opportunity to consistently test out your ability to recall that state of mental calm, serenity, and peace. In that special space you have built for yourself within your mind, there's no need to prove anything. You don't have to be somebody else. There are no painful memories. There is no worrying future. Instead, you just have calm in the here and now. Understand that you always have this available. Get some hope from this fact. Call this link at will. Once you have trained yourself to remember that meditative state when situations present themselves, the next step is to call it at will, meaning you yourself will trigger that meditative state. You no longer need stimuli. That's when you have reached a higher level of practical meditation because that sense of calm, release, and objective distance that you feel with your emotions pretty much persists on a 24/7 basis. You only need to choose to call that meditative state to being, and it happens. You now know it like the back of your hand. Conclusion. All the things that I've taught you here are the product of several years of meditation and mindfulness practice. There are lots of pitfalls. There are lots of dead ends. There are lots of false leads and false positives. I've weeded all those out, and I've presented to you meditative practices that work. However, these materials will not work for you until and unless you commit to doing them. It's really important that you go through this training in order. Don't skip. Don't jump ahead. Focus on it one step at a time. This way, you will be able to fully benefit from the techniques that I have described in this training. It is also important that you focus on consistency. A lot of people think that meditation is just another activity that they engage in because they're looking for a result. They are looking for some sort of solution. While that may ultimately be the truth, please understand that you must look at meditation and mindfulness as ends in and of themselves. In other words, they're not just means to an end. They don't just enable you to go where you really want to go. Instead, they must be your destination. They must find some sort of value in doing them. That value must be in the act itself. If you're able to do this, then it becomes part of you. It becomes part of your personality in addition to your daily routine. You will then be able to put yourself in a position where you will level up your ability to focus, stay in the present moment, achieve emotional distance and emotional clarity. Ultimately, it's all a choice. You have to exercise that choice. You have to be responsible for yourself, your thoughts, and your actions. Do it today. One of the most common problems I've noticed people experience with meditation is the fact that they feel that they would be able to do it only when things are right. They feel that they have to feel a certain way. They think that certain conditions have to be present in their life for them to do this. What you're doing is you're just giving yourself excuses to not start. I'm telling you, if you don't even get yourself to start, you are failing. You're not dealing with your stress. You're not getting your life back. You're not setting things in order as far as your mental peace and tranquility are concerned. You're achieving nothing. You might be thinking that you're researching book after book about meditation, but what you're really doing is just giving yourself an excuse to not start. You have to understand that when it comes to any kind of profound personal change, our number one enemy is ourselves. The paradox of self-sabotage. I know it sounds kind of weird. You know how frustrated you are. You know that you feel that something is missing in your life. You know that you're not fully content. You understand that meditation can help you achieve some sort of balance. You understand that meditation can lead to a greater sense of inner peace. Why in the world would you want to get in the way of that? Why in the world would you want to sabotage that? Well, it's actually quite simple. We're all creatures of habit. We get accustomed to things. We grow attached to things. Once you do things a certain way and you think about things a certain way, you feel that you're stuck in that pattern. You feel that you're not capable of going outside of that pattern. I know it sounds weird, but you know that you're not really all that happy. But ultimately, at some level or another, most people would rather deal with the devil they know rather than roll the dice and take chances with something better. They know they're not happy. They know that things could be so much better, but they're afraid of trying something new. These are the issues that you have to confront with. They will crop up sooner rather than later. I share them with you and I shine a light on them at this point in the training so you can spot them a mile away. Understand that when you start bargaining with yourself about why you should not meditate at the appointed time, you're basically giving in to this. This is all too predictable. This is to be expected. Now that you know that you're going to be playing all sorts of games with yourself, stick to your resolve. Stick to the game plan. Understand that there's a lot at stake. You're trying to get your life back. You're trying to gain control of your emotional and mental processes. You can be so much more productive, and you can be so much more effective if you overcome your old patterns. Unfortunately, if you allow yourself to make all sorts of excuses and justifications to go back to your old way of thinking, you give up a tremendous future for convenience. You've grown to love your chains. One of my favorite philosophers in college was the French Enlightenment thinker Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau said, "Man was born free, but everywhere he is in chains." This quote, of course, is all about political philosophy, but Rousseau was absolutely right on a personal level. We are born free. We are born with a tremendous amount of possibility. We are born with a tremendous amount of personal power. We have it in us to do great things. If you are doubtful of this, just think of the great thinkers, builders, and innovators of this world. Think about people who managed to build vast fortunes even though they were born with nothing. People have potential. All of us do. If successful people can succeed, you can too. How do I know? Well, each choice you make is an exercise of power. You have all this unlimited potential in you, and it all flows from the fact that you have a choice. Your choice gives you power of the things you think about, talk about, and the things that you think you are capable of doing. But the reason why you feel so powerless, so limited, so small is because you've allowed yourself to live in a neat, tidy little box. This box indicates what you can and cannot do. This box indicates what you are, what you're about, and what you are not. Nobody put you in that box. You chose to be in that box. You chose to live in a mental prison. It's as if everybody's walking around with this tremendous amount of personal potential, but they're looking at their chains. They're saying to themselves, "I'm a victim. I'm wearing these chains." Little do they know that the key is in their hands. Understand what is at stake. You have no excuse. You only have choices. I wish you nothing but victory.
Thank you for watching my videos. Please like, subscribe and share my channel.